testimony. Chair will now turn to Representative Johnson for his testimony on Senate Joint Resolution 11.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of SJ Res 11, a joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval of the EPA's regulation relating to, quote, control of air pollution from new motor vehicles, heavy-duty engines, and vehicle standards. The resolution, which I urge you to let the House consider under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code, rescinds the EPA's detrimental rulemaking that would impose overreaching, technology-forcing standards on heavy-duty trucks. This EPA rule is another step in the Biden administration's rush to electrify the transportation industry at the expense of our economy and the American consumers. The rule covers heavy-duty vehicles ranging in size from Class 2B trucks, such as the Ford F-250, to Class 8 trucks, known as semi-trucks. These trucks transport everything from food to consumer goods that directly impact the affordability and quality of life of the American people. SJ Res 11 rightly revokes EPA's heavy-duty trucks rule, which would negatively impact the trucking industry in a variety of ways, and in doing so, would also come to the rescue of Americans dependent on critical deliveries by the trucking industry. Now, EPA acknowledges that these new engine and vehicle standards are 80% more stringent than the previous standards. These unnecessarily stringent standards ignore the fact that new trucks have already reduced nitrogen oxide emissions, or NOx, by more than 98% over the last 35 years. Furthermore, the time frame by which heavy-duty trucks must meet the new engine and vehicle standards is unworkable. The EPA rule goes into effect from model year 2027, giving truckers extremely limited time to achieve compliance. Next, the EPA itself has admitted that the new rule would dramatically raise costs for trucks. Overall, the EPA's own projections indicate the cost of the new standards will be $39 to $55 billion. On a per-truck basis, the agency estimates that the emissions reduction technology to meet the new standards would cost more than $2,500 per Ford F-250. EPA also projects that new engine and vehicle standards will cost $8,304 per semi-truck. Even worse, the American truck dealers estimate that the cost per truck will be closer to $42,000. Smaller trucking companies that cannot afford these truck restrictions, especially at today's higher interest rates, will be forced out of business, which will have a direct impact on supply chains and the transportation of goods. If truck owners or operators manage to stay afloat, we all know that it's the American consumers that will ultimately be forced to bear the cost of this regulation. As the cost of shipping goods by truck increases, the prices for all such goods transported by truck will rise. Given that Americans are already struggling due to high inflation, EPA regulations that deliberately increase prices would be disastrous. Finally, the new heavy-duty truck regulations will not achieve the emissions reduction benefits that the EPA claims. In fact, it could do the exact opposite. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association warns that small business truckers will likely stay with older, less efficient trucks by this rule standard if they cannot afford the new trucks with compliant technology. The biggest source of NOx emissions are older trucks. So keeping the used, higher-emitting trucks in service for a longer period of time will actually increase emissions rather than decrease them. So it's our responsibility to protect Americans from bearing the cost of the Biden administration's ineffective and disastrous so-called Clean Trucks plan. Regulatory stringency for stringency's sake is no virtue. EPA's heavy-duty truck rule would only increase prices for American consumers and destroy already fragile supply chains for critical goods. Just a few weeks ago, the Senate, led by Senator Fisher, voted in a bipartisan manner to disapprove of the EPA's rulemaking. It is time for the House to take similar action and vote to stop President Biden's unjustified and impossible rush to electrify heavy-duty trucks. I encourage my colleagues to support S.J. Res. 11. And, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair now recognizes our good friend, the ranking member from the